Jimmy,
Yes.
I think I had about 40 different vehicles leak transmission and oil and radiator fluid in my driveway. Did he ever have a car that didn't leak?
You
Just
know,
asking.
it's like they say about the cobbler's kids go barefoot.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Talking About Cars with Randy Cardoon podcast featuring the one, the only Hot Rod Bob Beck, ladies and gentlemen, because everybody has a car story. You know, in this episode, we're going to take a moment here to remember a legend. This past week, car icon Gene Winfield passed away at the age of 97. Winfield has been in the car business for decades. Many of his creations likely built by some of you who were youth at the time, young kids at the time, because remember the AMT model car company? He made a whole bunch of those. He designed a whole bunch of those. I remember working on a few of those myself. They were so much fun. And by the way, it got us into a new relationship with Model Glue. But that's not important right now. It's something completely different. We are so lucky to have with us people that you know in the business that know him. First off, let's start right there with the one, the only John DiAgostino with all the awards behind him. John, good to see you. Johnny and Gene have been buddies for years, and what I want to hear about are some of the travels they had because they went all over this world doing that. Joe Coddington, right there. She is, of course, has known Gene for many years. Also, Carly Brogren, there she is.
Hi.
He actually worked on a car for her, which we're going to talk about, and you're going to see here in a little bit. And Jimmy Severino. Jimmy has been with Gene for years, helping him out, and part of his life as he has lived out his recent years. And Jimmy, thank you so much for taking a few moments to join us. Bob,
Yep.
again,
Yep.
Hot Rod Bob, you have known Gene for many years as well.
Yeah, I met him obviously in the car show circuit and so forth. He was always a regular at Irwindale for Moon Eyes and so forth, and always seeing the Grand Nationals and other shows that I'd go to. Uh, Always went to his open house. That was great. That was a car show in itself, and seeing some of his creations. I used to have fun just walking through the boneyard in the back.
Mm-hmm.
That was exciting to me, just looking at what he had stuffed away in the back there. And he was always personable too with me. I always liked talking with him. Spent some time. He was down here in Ventura for the Ventura Nationals a few times. I got to chat with him there. Hot August Nights. He was when I saw him at Hot August Nights, Jimmy. That's when he had his beard, and I hadn't seen him with a beard. Almost didn't recognize him, and he was right there on the cruise lanes. So it
Is
was
that is
uh,
that true, Gene? He was, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, all right.
it was one of those things.
One of these things that this show's going to be is it's really stories about Gene because all of us, in a way, have run across Gene in some way or another. And I thought the best way, because there are so many people that have had experiences with him that could be on and talk about that. But I think you guys are going to enjoy this group because they know him and they've known him for years. And John, let's start off with you. Let's talk a little bit about when did you meet Gene Winfield, and how far back does that go? And talk about some of your travels.
Well, first off, I met Gene. This is the 50th year. I met him in 1975. I had a 1951 Merc that was built by Rod Powell, Bill Hines, but I ended up driving the Merc in white primer to the Grand National Road Show in Oakland, and I had it in the parking lot, right in the front where the boxes where people check in. And I just happened to see Gene there, and he came to me. And Mercs at that time, back in the mid 70s, there were very few. They were like passe. Nobody really built a Merc back in the early to mid 70s. Very few people. But he came to me and he says, "I love this Merc. Who built it?" And I said, "Well, Rod Powell and his crew chopped the car. It went to Bill Hines' shop in Bellflower. They ended up doing all the lead work on the car. He did hydraulic lifts at the time back in the early or mid 70s. And he just gave me a warm feeling. He said, you know what? I'm going to be inside. I have a booth. Come and see me. Let's talk customs. So that's basically but before then, back in 59, when I went to my first Grand National Oakland Roadster show, I saw some of his cars in there. I saw, matter of fact, the Jade Idol was built back in 59, give or take. I saw that car. I saw another one called the Solar Scene that he built that was a chopped Merc. And his name was big because I used to follow the magazines. Rod and Custom was big back then, Hop Up, Honk, everything. But he was one of probably the top 5 in the world for publicity. Everybody wanted Gene Winfield, George Barris, Joe Balon, Daryl Starbird. Those are the big boys. And I'm telling you, just meeting Gene back in 75 and then hanging around with them for many, many years. I've done hundreds of shows around the world with Gene, not just in America, Finland, Sweden, Norway, England. I have so many stories. I mean, I could write a book just about the stories about Gene. But I'm telling you, it's very sad to see him go. I had the honor to sit next to him at the Grand National Roasted Show in February at the 75th anniversary.
Yeah.
He was on one side. Jay Orberg, another legend, was on the other side of me. That was a big honor for me to be there with them. And then a few months earlier, just before Christmas, we did actually they put on Kyle Hogue put on a show for him over in Paso Robles that I attended. It was a charity show. We drew about $39,000 for it. But I had the honor to go on stage and actually get some of my stuff, T-shirts, posters, and all that money went to Gene. Those are the last 2 times I really was with Gene. And I told the wife about a month ago, I says, very soon we got to go see Gene in Paso Robles. I want to take him to lunch. I want to talk. And it's sad because it was within a week we would have been there. And then I found out a couple weeks ago that he passed on. So it was a big blow to me. It really is, because I've done so much with Gene Winfield that I'll never forget. And to me, he'll be in my heart forever. And I know he's in everybody's heart. For every custom guy around the world, will never forget Gene Winfield. So that's just the start of me and Gene. Like I said, hundreds of shows around the world, all over in 3 or 4 different continents: Canada, South America, Europe, Asia, and a lot in America. So my heart goes out to Gene. I'll never forget him. And I've been posting, try to post every day or every other day, a little memory, what I call remembering Gene. So if you follow me on Facebook,
Yes.
John DiAugustino, or on my YouTube, Johnny D Custom with the K, you'll see a lot on Gene for a long time to come.
You know, Johnny, I think that what was amazing to me is the fact that when you guys were all coming up, and as you mentioned, so many names in the business, it wasn't like you guys were going after each other competition-wise. It was, in
No.
fact, it was almost like Gene, I think, was quoted as saying you guys were all family.
That's exactly right. He talked about being a custom fan. He says, he even told me one time, Johnny, I know better than you or some of these people that are building these cars. We're all the same, but we're all having fun. And I'll never forget that. And you know, looking at Gene in the early days until he passed on, his name was huge. Like I says, he's in the class of Barris and Winfield. Those are probably my top 2 favorite, but there's many other favorites right behind them that to me I consider top-notch customizers, and I could go on and on about that. But let's just stay with Gene right now.
Absolutely. And Joe, I must say that your relationship with Gene certainly was more, I don't want to say personal, but certainly because of his relationship with your former husband, Boyd. I think that goes back as a long time as well.
Well, I met Gene actually through Boyd, but just like Johnny D, even as a young girl, I followed the hot rod magazines, you know. I read about Boyd Coddington in a little tiny article about that big. And then later about his wheels. That's how I wound up there. But with Gene always supported us. He supported all of our shows. We tried to support Gene with his shows. And Boyd and Gene got along really well. I mean, Boyd would give him stuff when if you were ever at our shop was always pristine, a place for everything. If you were in Gene's shop, the place was everywhere, and there was everything everywhere. So Boyd and he used to kibitz back and forth about how, kind of messy Gene was, and Gene said, I am a savant because I'm so bright, I know where everything is. You, on the other hand, Boyd, have to put everything back so you remember where everything is.
Carly,
But
how did you come across Gene?
Well, I had seen him at shows for probably 4 or 5 years. I got my Zephyr. It was this ugly orange and white color, and I drove it that way for 5 years. But uh, I, was a fan at first and just said hello to him and made small talk and bought a shirt. And it took me about 8 shows where I told myself I was going to ask if he would paint my car. And And so I finally got enough nerve to ask him if he would paint my car. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I'll make that car come alive. And he did. And I took the car to him in December of 2019. And I thought we would lay out a bunch of swatches of paint colors and we would look at all the things. And it wasn't like that at all. He goes, okay, do you like green, yellow, blue, or purple? I said, is that it? He goes, that's it. And I said, I was thinking more of like a red, kind of a brandy wine. Oh, hell no, 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 nope. I don't do reds. They turned to pink, and he just squashed that idea. So my idea of what color it was going to be was not his idea. So I said, well, I like purple and I like blue. And he said, that's all I need to know. That's it. And so we went with that, and the rest is history. He's actually painted the car 5 times. You don't have enough time in this show for me to tell you that story, but it's quite a story. But anyway, it's an amazing paint job.
Oh yeah, it
5
pops.
times. 5
Yep.
times?
Yes. It got hit in a car museum. The first time he painted it, he told me, he says, I've got interior quotes. He goes, Bob Devine, he's in Pittsburgh, Antioch, or Pittsburgh, I guess it was. And he said, Bob Devine will do it for one price. I think it was 7,000 or 8,000. And then he said, I got a guy here in Mojave. He'll do it for 10, but he needs 9 weeks. And Bob Devine can do it in 4 weeks. And I'm like, well, go to Bob Devine then, because we were trying to make Grand National Roadster Show. He wanted the car to premiere there or debut there. And I said, so send the car to interior first. And then paint it when you get back. And he goes, oh, hell no. He goes, do you know how many cars we had to move around to get your car in the booth? It's in the booth. We're painting the car. And so I'm like, but so many things could happen. He's, no, rah, rah, rah. And he's just, oh, no, we're not doing that. And I said, okay. So he calls me a few days later and he goes, well, I got some bad news. He said, the car came loose in the trailer when my shop guy were towing it to Bob Devine. So it's a little scuffed up is what he said. That's what they told him. And I flew to LA. He picked me up. My tow rig was in Mojave. So I jumped in that Hummer and I went to Antioch or Pittsburgh to pick up my car. And there was chips missing out of it. I said, there's no way we're making Grand National Roadster. So it was like in 6 or 7 days by that point. And I sent photos and it was more than scuffed up. So he goes, I didn't like that first paint job anyway. I'm going to repaint it. So that's how that went. Then it got hit in a car museum. After I showed it one time, I was storing it at the Graffiti Museum in Modesto, which was still under construction. But the guy there wanted me to bring it to 2 of his shows. So he's letting me store the car for free because my next 4 shows were in California and I live up by Seattle, Washington. And so I was trying to save gas money. So I said, okay. So then some guy was on a flatbed truck full of porta potties. They were doing an event for their benefactors. And even though it wasn't open to the public, and he backed into my car with the flatbed truck of porta potties. So, yeah. So he had to repaint it again. And that second paint job was the best one out of all of them. None of them ever looked the same. There's no way you can replicate that. So
We saw it down in Palm Desert. It looked beautiful down there, and
Yeah.
especially in the sun, that thing pops.
It does. Yeah.
I just never thought this show would include porta potties. I just, I think that's a great addition to the program, and this is why we brought Carly on the program. There, you see.
All right,
You can
Jimmy.
count on me.
Jimmy, you've been around all this for how many years?
Well, I'm kind of long-winded, but let's just say we used to have, if anybody that's been around Southern California back in the 70s, our go-to was the Recycler newspaper. And we would read that religiously on Thursday, get it. And I was either buying or selling something every week in that newspaper. It was just classified paper. I'd always be buying and selling stuff. So I was looking for some chrome rims. And anyway, so I answered this classified ad, and they answered the phone. They said Winfield Special Projects, and it turns out that was a company that Gene was doing a lot of customizing. Nothing was really going on with customizing at that point in the late 70s, and Gene was mainly working on building special projects and things for commercials and things like that. And so anyway, so he says, and if you've ever over his Canoga Park store, his shop, so a guy answers the door with longer hair and a longer beard than me. And I said, hey, I called about the chrome wheels. So he takes me through the shop. And anyway, and I see these guys are on a 55-gallon drum. They got a fiberglass tree trunk there. And I'm thinking, they're working on it. And I'm thinking, this guy must build stuff for the studio, props and stuff like that. So he takes me out and back and he shows me these rims. And so I go, yeah, I'll take them, So anyway, so he goes, well, my boss is up in the office. So on my way back through there, I see this like 57 Chrysler that's chopped sitting in primer in the corner. And so I go in the office and Gene gets off the phone. And at this point, I'm just going to this guy's shop and I want to get these rims. And I happen to see a custom car in there. So I buy the rims off him and stuff. And it was like $50, It was like stuff was incredibly cheap back then, So anyway, so I go, so I buy the rims. And I said, hey, did you chop the top on that Chrysler yourself? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, that reminded me, I had the way the car was facing, it had these big fins on the back and everything. And I said, well, that car kind of reminds me of an old show car from the late 50s, early 60s called the Jade Idol. And Gene had just moved into the Canoga Park shop there. And on the paneling, like thumbtacked to the wall, was a Polaroid picture of the Jade Idol that Rod Powell had just restored. And he goes, you mean that car? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, I built it. And I'm thinking, this guy's full of shit. He didn't build the Jade Idol. Gene Winfield built the Jade Idol. So anyway, so he goes, yeah. I go, really? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I'm Gene Winfield. I'm like, oh, what? I go, I didn't recognize you, man. I said, I've been reading about you, since I was a kid and everything. And so anyway, so I bought the wheels and we talked a little bit. And I'm taking the wheels out to my dad's truck. And I'm like, Dad, this guy's one of the top custom builders. He's like Barrett's, So that was 1979. But I already knew about Gene. My older brother between my sister and my brother is 19 months. And between my brother and me is 21 years. So there's a big gap there. But my brother was not really a car guy, but growing up going to high school in the 50s and stuff. Anyway, he used, when the AMT started coming out with the models, my brother was a drummer and he was on the road and he was stationed in Texas in the service and in the Army band there. And anyway, so he'd build models and send them home to my dad. So he built a 49 Merc kit when it first came out in 63. And there was a note in there, and I still have those kits. He had a note in there. He goes, this is a Merc like like I used to drive, when we lived on Newcastle. And I remember, I was like 7 years old when I saw that. And I And I remember, I'd read on the side of the box about AMT's new customizing team, and Gene Winfield was one of the
Mm-hmm.
kind of got me into building model kits and stuff, and going to the supermarket and you know reading car magazines, Rod and Custom mainly, while I'm waiting for my mom's shop, and I always think about that. If somebody who had come up to me and said, "Hey, like in 30 years, you're going to be louvering a hood with Gene Winfield someday," I never would have believed them. So anyway, so 1979, I saw him, and we'd see each other at LA Roadsters. He'd have a booth there and stuff, and so uh, I'm in the supermarket one night at 10 o'clock at night, and buying some bananas, and I hear, "Hey, how's it going, young fella?" And I turn around, and it's Gene. And I'm like, "Hey, Gene, how you doing?" And he says, and this is like 15 years had passed. And I said, "You still have your shop?" He goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, I'm gonna keep doing this till they put me in the ground. So
You
I
did.
said, "Well," I said, I said, I took a documentary photography class over here at Pierce College, and I've always wanted to do some how-to articles. And I said, "Do you think it'd be okay to come by there and take some pictures?" So he says, "Yeah, sure, anytime." So I stopped in there one day, and we just got talking, and he asked me, and I said, "Well, I had a shop a while back, and I was doing engine swaps and wiring and suspension work and stuff." And he says, "Oh," he says, "well, you can do wiring." He says, "I got this car, I got to get it finished up." And the guy who was working for me went back to his construction job, and he keeps telling me he's going to come on the weekend or on the evenings and do it. And I really need it done. So I said, "I'm not really looking for a job right now. I'm going to school, but I went back to college, but I can come by and do that." And one thing led to another, and then he started on Maybelline. That was 1997, and so I was with him for basically about 27 years.
Wow.
And
Well, I want to get to more about how you were helping him out recently, but I want to ask John. We had talked about you guys being on the road. Give me a good Gene story about you two on the road. Something that happened unusual, something that kind of, when I say road story, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
1982. And Jimmy Severino, you'll remember this. Well, you might remember this. In 79, the car that you saw, the 57 Chrysler, Richard Zoke commissioned Gene to
yes,
build that car because Richard Zoke goes back in the late 50s with Gene, building cars with Gene. So that's the car you've seen, and that was sort of a take after the Wilhelm Black 57 Chrysler that was built around 59. So what do you call it? Zoke wanted to get it painted in the Winfield blend, and I call it the 50-50 creamsicle, which that's what I owned. I owned that car at one time. I bought it in 1982 from Richard, but I'll never forget this. We're going to the Moscone show, San Francisco Moscone show. Gene drove up and went to my house, and he's with his, I think that a year or so later, they had a baby together. I think her name is Natalie or whatever. Anyway,
his daughter Nancy.
Nancy.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. Now she's
I'll
born
never
in
forget this.
'86.
I'm driving a customized 72 Mark IV at the time. Okay, it was about a 10-year-old car, but it was all customized. I customized it years ago, and I end up driving Gene with Nancy in the back seat. Gene is just all over her. I mean, he's kissing her. I mean, they're all together. So it's funny when we walk into the show, we had the 57 Chrysler there, the one that I bought from Zoke, and I had it on pillows. It was like polyester pillows. I must have bought about 100 pillows or more, and it looked like it was floating on a cloud. So Gene right away says, "Oh my God, I've never seen it like this. What is it that you're using?" I says, "Those are pillows that I've stretched and I put it looked like a piece of carpet, but it looked like a cloud." Well, that started the whole thing with me and Gene. And then ever since then, I start commissioning a lot of different cars to Gene, probably at least a dozen from 82 to probably towards the end, at least a dozen cars. And one of them, I think everybody will remember this one. This is the Royal Emperor. Do you remember the Royal Emperor, the 57 with the turned around top that Gene chopped, done it in all greens and emeralds and the whole bit? Well, they ended up putting it on a kit back in 1996 because the car debuted in 95. And this is the first one out of 500. And I just happened to find it a couple weeks ago in a box that I've had for almost 30 years. But this was probably, out of all the cars that Gene has built for me, they're all winners, but this one kind of set the trends because it went all over the world back in 95, 96, and 97. It went to Sweden, Custom Motor Show. Then it went to Finland. It went to Norway. It toured Europe for a whole year. Then it ended up going to Asia. But this car right here, to me, is something I have big photos of it, big posters in one of my trophy rooms. And I always look at this, and it just brings back so many memories with Gene Winfield. But God, that's just one of the stories of Gene. But probably one of the later ones was in 2018 or 2019 when me, Gene, Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, and Jimmy Shine got inducted. And you'll remember this, Jimmy, into the European Hall of Fame, the first European Hall of Fame. It was at Yankee Car Show in Lahti, Finland, which is near Helsinki. And we got inducted that year. We all showed up there. Gene did a workshop. He chopped a 51 Chevy right at the show. He was very focused on getting that thing done in 3 days, which he did. But what really was really sad about this whole thing is that on the Saturday night when we were going to be inducted to the Hall of Fame, we all got up on the podium. There was Jimmy Shine was next to me. On the other side of me was Billy Gibbons, myself. I was the one that's sort of promoting to get everybody on stage to do this big presentation. And there were other people that got inducted that year from Europe, but we were missing one person. That was Gene Winfield. So I told the promoter, Michael Forsman and Kersey, I said, we need Gene here. We're ready to start. So they went to find Gene, and they ended up going to where he was chopping the car, and he was very focused. Said, Gene, Johnny's on the stage. He's introducing everybody. You need to get up here. Well, Gene stopped his work, and it's so sad because when he was walking up to the stage, he was probably 50 foot away from us, and I guess there was a cord on the floor that he tripped, and he broke his hip. So he never got onto they rushed into the hospital. We delayed it till the next day because we didn't know what was going to go on with Gene, but the prognosis was that he broke his hip, and I think he stayed about 3 months in Finland till he got healed enough to fly back to America. But that was a very unfortunate situation because Gene was the one we were waiting on. But
yeah, remember when that happened? That was everyone in the custom industry.
September of 2018.
Yes, September. That's right. That's right. And that's when they put on they did a GoFundMe for Gene. And if I remember right, it got right at about $100,000. I've never seen a GoFundMe with so many people donating money and just to get Gene back. But he had to recuperate over there, and he spent about 3 months. And then finally he ended up flying back and Jimmy, you know the whole story, Jimmy.
Oh man, it's kind of people go, they always go, Jimmy's got the memory, but anyway, it was September, I think 24th or something like that,
right,
of 2018, and
right.
So then we had his show all scheduled in October of that year, and so Gene was still in the hospital over there recuperating, and John, Office John, we called him, he set up that they had a monitor there, and he went around with a cell phone and showed Gene what was going on, the different cars, and people were talking with Gene over I don't know how they did it, over Zoom or something. I don't know what they did.
I remember
never
seeing
got a chance. I was too busy running around, trying to take care of the show and stuff. I never got a chance to see it, but so then he made it back the day before SEMA. He and Laura flew back, and anyway, so then I was supposed to go with them to SEMA, and then we had something came up here, a little emergency with the plumbing, and I had to take care of that. So I went the next day with somebody else, and I'm walking around in SEMA, And I go, of course, to Hot Rod Alley, and I was over there at U.S. Radiator, Joe Armstrong.
Don Armstrong.
Don Armstrong.
Yep.
And anyway, his lady there was in front. She goes, "Oh, what's going on with Gene? Is he in Finland?" I go, "No." She goes, "Where is he home?" And I go, "No." She goes, "Where is he?" I go, "He's here at SEMA. I don't know where he is. I haven't seen him. I saw him yesterday." And she's like, "He's going around SEMA. He just broke his hip, you know." So, you know, he was a real go-getter, you know what I'm saying? He wouldn't let anything keep him down.
I
We
remember actually him being there and he was just running around and he had a little wheelchair thing and he was still running over to like sign autographs and he insisted he was going to stand and do it at that time. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, we're going to see something really horrible happen soon. And nope, he just got
oh
up and stood up for a while and
yeah,
was signing
yeah.
autographs.
I was afraid he wasn't going to do his therapy and just give up or something, you know, because he says, "I want to get back there." And I'm like, "Well, what about your therapy?" He goes, "Well, I don't know, you know." But he kept at it doing it himself. And you know, and like I mentioned earlier, you know, I had an older sister who, you know, she had kids my age. And so I'd go visit her if Jean was out of town, you know, and we'd go spend the weekend with her. And so Gene came by to pick me up one day, and he's got his crutches, and he gets out of the car, and she goes, "Gene," and I think Gene was 92 at the time, and she goes, "Gene, you're making us octogenarians look bad." He's just up and going, you know, after a broken hip.
Wow. I'm going to talk to Carly here in a minute, but
Sure.
first, Joe, tell me a little bit when you look back and you've kept in touch with Gene through the years. I mean, the guy just was, I want to say he was almost like the Energizer Bunny. He grew
Exactly.
older, but he just had so much energy.
He actually was. And I have a on the road out of the country about Boyd and I and George Barris, Gene Winfield. We were all in Sweden at the time.
Sweden.
Johnny, you were
Sweden.
there too. All of us,
Yeah.
right?
Custom Motor Show Sweden.
And so anyway, with Gene, he always sat next to me. So I have Boyd on one side and Gene on the other side. Even as of late, it's Gene and Linda Vaughn and I on each side of him. He just likes his blondes. But Gene, if there was music playing, and I think everyone here will attest to this, he danced with everyone, even if they were the dishwasher in the back. He would get them to dance with him until the music stopped, and then he wanted his ice cream.
Exactly.
Wow.
That's right.
So, but anyway, we had a really great time, and there were some, the European women are absolutely gorgeous, and Gene was in love with all of them. Sure. Queenie and George. So yeah, I've got some stories on those boys. You're a good boy though, Johnny. I kept my eye on you too.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
All right, dodge that bullet. Okay, we're fine. Yeah, move on.
Wow. So Carly, tell us a little bit more about, you've kept in touch with Gene over the years, or have you, I mean, what's the reaction when people find out how you got Gene to work on your car? I mean,
Well, I was actually told not to paint this car in a fade, and by some really big name car people. They told me I would ruin the car, and they really told me not to do it. And I had a lot of sleepless nights after I came back home, but my thought process was, and I'm kind of new to this car thing. I've only been in it 8 years, so I have no idea what I'm doing. But in my thought process, I thought, it's a radical custom, so it should be able to handle a radical paint job. And so I told Gene, I said, and the only thing I don't want people to just look at it and see paint. I still want them to see the body lines. So can you make that happen? And he goes, yeah, I got you. Don't worry. I know exactly what to do. And so we discussed the skunk stripes, and I said, I don't want that 4-inch jade idol stripe going down the roof and the hood. I said, don't do that. I said, I know nobody tells Picasso how to paint, but would you please just make some subtle lines? So he did on the belt line, on the fenders, and he didn't. I said nothing on the roof, please. And so I didn't know whether he would listen to, my idea or not. I just had to leave it up to him. So, the first time he painted it, the stripes were so light you couldn't even hardly see them. And so after it came loose in the trailer and he had to repaint it again, I said, you can go a little bolder on the stripes, Gene. I said, just not wider, just do bolder. So he did, and we found that happy medium. So, but yeah, he took it on and he made the car look amazing. And everybody wants to know, all about Gene every time, I'm at shows and stuff. And I have a lot of stories. Some I can't tell and some I can, but he's quite a character. I am going to miss him every day of my life until the day I'm gone, but he's quite a guy.
When was the last time he had put his touch to the car?
When the last time he touched my car?
Yeah.
Well, I took it to the charity show in November, so he was there then, and we took a few pictures and stuff with he and I in the car, at the car, and standing at the car. But
when did he paint it last?
In 2022, I picked it up in after it got hit in the car museum, I came back to Mojave with the car, and I stayed for 4 months. I was advocating for getting my car done. I ended up, cleaning and cooking and getting him to his doctor's appointments and dialysis and everything. And I was just trying to get the car done and make sure he was okay and everything. So it took 4 months, and he finished in September of 2022. My first show with the car out of his booth was at his show in October of 2022.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. You took the car to him to do a little bit more on it, and the next thing you know, you're chauffeuring him around and taking him to doctor's appointments, and you ended up being there for 4 months. I mean, that's hands-on for your car.
Yeah, yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, he just, he's an easy guy to be around. He's very humble, and there's no ego involved. And I just wanted to help him in any way I could. So I was trying to get the car done. There was a lot of times I slept in his hospital room for 7 nights at Cedars-Sinai. He had a blood infection one time, and I talked him into going to Cedars-Sinai. It was quite a battle, but I got him there. And it was just before his induction into the SEMA Hall of Fame, and there was a dinner that we were trying to make it to, and this was 7 days before that dinner, and he and I had a discussion about if the doctors were going to release him or not, because he was on IV antibiotics, and he said, I'm signing out AMA whether they let me go or not. So I rushed over to Macy's. There was a Macy's around the corner, and I rushed over there. I bought him a suit. I bought me a dress and shoes. I got him shoes. I spent $800 on clothes because we didn't have time to go back to Mojave. So we had to, look nice for the dinner. And I got into that dinner. They released him at 2 p.m, and the dinner started, I think the cocktail hour started at 5 or something. And I got him there and handed him off to Steve Winfield, his son. And I went up to the hotel room and got my clothes changed, and we made that dinner. But it was really important for him to be there, and I was not going to let him miss that no matter what. So
that was really cool. I mean, Jerry and I went over there to be at that event there. To the induction. It was in Anaheim, and Chip was there. Chip Foose, which he's known forever, and Steve and they're about the same age, and Sam and Gene used to do stuff together. So I forgot.
Right.
I forgot you guys know each other pretty well, So it's pretty cool.
I mean,
give me a question.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Jimmy.
Yes.
I think I had about 40 different vehicles leak transmission and oil and radiator fluid in my driveway. Did he ever have a car that didn't leak?
It's like they say about the cobbler's kids go barefoot.
Wow.
They could. I don't know. I'm hoping to. I have so many photos and things like that, and I'm trying to. That's I think going to be when one door closes, another one opens, and people have been telling. And I like I said, I had originally come by here to take some picture, or came by the original shop to take some pictures. On Instagram, my moniker or whatever you call it is the Hot Rod Answer Man, and I'm planning to do some stuff and do some some history with stuff with Gene and other things and other little trivia and things like that people do. So
Keep
Well,
in touch and let us know about this, Jim.
yeah,
okay, very
absolutely.
good.
Yes. I think
Absolutely.
it'd be awesome, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Closing statement. All I could say is God bless Gene. He got a lot of great memories with him for 50 years, from 1975 to now. And he may be gone, but he's in my heart forever. And I'm gonna miss him. I know I'll always miss him, and the world will always miss him.
Definitely.
He is a legend.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
100%. But you know what? I'm going to say this to everybody that's there. We owe it to Gene, because he was so close to us and meant so much to us, to help carry on his legacy. His children are not really involved, in the industry. So it's up to us. Like I'm speaking to the Iola Car Show about doing something incredible for Gene back there.
Wow.
But it's up to us. So Johnny, what you're doing, remembering Gene, Jimmy, what you're doing, Carly, what you're doing, Randy, Bob, I mean, thank you. But we need to do this.
Carly, give me your last thought.
So many memories.
Just it's a huge void that's never going to be filled. And the first day I couldn't cry at all, and the next day I cried 4 or 5 times, and I've cried every day since. But I'll just always love Gene. Oh God, now I'm gonna cry again. Good God.
Bob, your last thought.
He's going to be missed. He definitely was an influencer. You look at the cars, and then you find out he built them, and it just continues on. Top cars. And I find out more information every day about things that he was involved with that I wasn't aware of. We talked about the AMT. I know he was involved with AMT, but the Piranha, which was basically the Man from U.N.C.L.E. car, I didn't realize he'd been involved with that, in the racing version of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So many great stories. And unfortunately, we've run out of time. But I mean, it has been great. I thank all of you, even those of you who came in last minute. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And hi, Joe. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Names, so, yeah.
Again, thanks to our guests, John D'Agostino, Jimmy Severino in California, Joe Coddington in Arizona, Hot Rod Bob Beck also in California, and of course, Carly and I in the beautiful state of Washington. Thank you guys. In fact, that's what our skies look like right now, right behind Carly's. Thank you guys so much. This has been so much fun and so revealing, because there's so many great stories.
We need a 50-year podcast.
I know.
Yeah.
And only Randy and Bob could do that. So don't think it could happen.
Yeah, you never know. Well, we'll work on that for you. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Thanks for coming on the show, guys. Thanks for watching,
Thank you
everybody. And for all our guests, join us next time on the Talking About Cars podcast. So long, everybody.
So long.
Take care.